The things that worry us remain the same, have remained the same, the areas of priority where people want action, infrastructure, as you pointed out, electricity. These are the diamonds that people would want to see. But as Minister Fashola pointed out, diamonds are always found in the rough. Right. And it's the cleaning and the polishing that is the real work that is to be done. While we're talking of all of this, one of the things that seems to determine whether or not all the things that we want to see, all the things that we want to do come out the way we expect is the politics, the good governance. And in this regard, we cannot have enough time to discuss all of this. But first of all, let me bring in Professor Pat Utomi. Professor Utomi is an expert in economic activity. He joins us from via Zoom, as you can see, from here in Lagos. Professor Utomi, thank you for your time and happy Independence Anniversary. Before I allow you to respond, let me say that we'll also be joined very shortly by Professor Akin Oyebode, Dr. Junaid Mohammed, who is in our Kano studio. And we expect also to be joined by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Mr. Femi Adeshina. But Professor Utomi, happy anniversary.
Same indeed to you.
Earlier on, you were quoted as saying that the roadblock to Nigeria's economic success is its political elite. Can you expatiate on that point a little?
Well, I have no doubt in my mind about that. You see, opportunities will always exist. What happens or what it turns out is a function of how you manage it. And I think that the political class in Nigeria has not managed development well. And I have evidence to show for it. Our country's economy has been referred to as a recursive economy. And this is not my phraseology. I was privileged on a DFID program many years ago to be working with a group of economists from Cambridge and Oxford on drivers of change in Nigeria. And we were sitting in some hotel room in Abuja past midnight, looking at the graphs of how Nigeria's economy had traveled. And one of them just said, my goodness, this is a classic recursive economy. 2 steps forward, 4 steps backwards. And I said to them, what do you think is responsible for this? Guys, I can't figure it out. I don't know. I said, well, I can figure it out. I can tell you. Nigeria has weak institutions. So when the right policies are made under pressure, usually, just like we're talking about deregulation now because we're under pressure. We don't have the money to pay. I mean, these are things we should have done years ago. Even in this administration, we should have done that a long time ago. But whenever it's convenient, the Nigerian political class wants to, provide those opportunities for rent to be extracted. When they then get into a corner, they immediately realize, oh my goodness, the sensible thing to do is to deregulate, for example. And they say, oh, let's deregulate. But there is no real commitment deep inside to that policy choice. So once you begin to do something, there is some pushback. The institution is too weak, and we run away from that policy choice. And so we end up with a recursive economy. So I said to my friends from Cambridge and Oxford, the real problem with the Nigerian economy, and I can give you a number of variables you can use when you want to understand it. You got to look at the institutions. Because of weak institutions, as the example I've just given, we get to be pushed back and pushed forward. You make the right policy choices. So policy choices matter. We don't always make the right policy choices until we're under pressure. The structural adjustment program, for example. When in 1982, the Nigerian economy was in a structural cul-de-sac, it was clear that Nigeria needed to, in fact, I tell stories about being at INSEAD, and a professor of global finance from Stern School of New York was making a presentation of exchange rate divergence from purchasing power parity. And Latin America used to be crazy in those days. And Africa was strange. Could see Asia, could see the Asian purchasing power parity line going straight, and the divergence from that line being just marginal. You saw Africa, like Latin America, going really, really wild. But one was wild beyond contention, beyond management, was Nigeria. The exchange rate was way out of the graph relative to Nigeria's purchasing power parity. Now, we knew all that period that what was reasonable to do was essentially to devalue our currency, 82, 83, 84. We continued to play this game. By the time we had no choice, we were in a lockdown, we were Venezuela-type scenario. It was 1985. And academics were still speaking funny grammar. And President Babangida had to come up with a clever way to deal with it. It was called a structural adjustment program that was whatever we called it. But anyway, we finally, under pressure, began to make some correct policies. But as those policies were being made, weak institutions, like the central bank, for example, are using stabilization securities to contain its perception of inflation, led to the death of 7-year money or long-term finance in the Nigerian economy. So these things are the things I said to my friends from Cambridge and Oxford on that project, were the problems that made the Nigerian economy recursive. Of course, the other issues, the other variables you have to deal with, human capital, the quality of human capital, level of entrepreneurship in the economy. There's a way that you will run an economy, and entrepreneurs don't feel like playing that economy. Let me tell you, when Forbes magazine said Nigeria was a money-losing machine last year, they were not trying to insult Nigeria. They were essentially looking at objective data. Today in Nigeria, any governor can wake up, cancel your C of O, and you've invested billions of naira in that land to do something. If you are rational, you are going to Nigeria, you don't want to invest long-term. You want to play games that no governor can deal with. So the ease of doing business, we can talk a lot about it. The reality is Nigeria is not easy to do business until we can re-educate our political class to understand that people look at long-term things and not short-term personal advantage. We will be in serious trouble. We are shortchanging our children, we are shortchanging the future, and I don't think they're wicked. They're just not knowledgeable enough to realize the damage they're doing. I know that plunder is a motivation for politics. We go back 1850, Frederick Bastiat, legal plunder. You know, many people go, but education, strong institutions, and all of those make politicians, especially when there is a real democracy and there's rational public conversation. And politicians realize they would make a terrible mistake against the interest of their people, and they will be held accountable for it.
Prof, we want to put you on pause.
Yes.
Prof, we need to put you on pause there. Ijoma, you wanted to...
Yes, sorry about that. We will come back to you. But the president did speak today, and he talked about our institutions, he talked about the economy, and the bits that you're mentioning. Let's listen to what he has to say, and then we'll come back to you for a response.
Strengthening institutions to make them stronger in protecting national interests, and G, imbibing tolerance in diversity. I am a firm believer in transparent, free, fair, and credible elections, as has been demonstrated during my period as a democratically elected president. The recent build-up and the eventual outcome of the Edo State election should encourage Nigerians that it is my commitment to bequeath to this country processes and procedures that would guarantee that the people's votes count. The problems with our electoral process is mainly human-induced, as desperate desire for power leads to desperate attempts to gain power and office. Democracy, the world over, and as I am pursuing in Nigeria, recognizes the power of the people. However, if some constituencies choose to bargain off their power, be prepared for denial of their rights. This goal is made more urgent if we realize that even after a transparent, free, fair, and credible election, desperation leads to compromising the judiciary to overturn legitimate decisions of the people. It is necessary to, therefore, support the enthronement of the rule of law by avoiding actions which compromise the judiciary.
President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, before we go on into the political discussion and into the reaction that we promised Professor Utomi there, your comments are coming in on hashtag Nigeria Diamond in the Rough and hashtag CTV Nigeria at 60 as well. Many of you are trying to respond to what the ministers have said earlier. We'll take your tweets, we'll take your comments as this continues. We still have about 2 hours or thereabouts to go. Yeah.
Now, we're being joined now by the full panel. In the studio with us here is Professor Akin Oyebode. I don't know, Prof, would I be correct to say emeritus professor?
Not yet formally.
Not yet formally,
We're
but
still waiting on Unilag.
Okay, we can refer to you as that. Nobody will arrest us for that.
No way, no.
You're welcome, Prof. Thank you for being with us. Professor Oyebode is, of course, former Vice Chancellor, amongst others, of the University of Ado-Ekiti in Ekiti State. Thank you, and happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you.
From our Kano studios, we're being joined by Second Republic lawmaker, now elder statesman, Dr. Junaid Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Happy Independence Anniversary. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the invite.
Also joining us from Abuja is Mr. Femi Adeshina, the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Mr. Adeshina, welcome. Happy Independence Anniversary.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ijama, you want to start with Prof?
Yes, I want to start with Prof. You're welcome, Prof. And we've been talking about institutions. We will still talk about that. But looking at the day itself, it is one of the days we honor the founding fathers. And we hear the best way to do that is to have the kind of Nigeria that they envisioned. Prof, are we there? The kind of Nigeria they envisioned?
Or even close?
Well, I think I will say a decisive no. Nigeria has been punching below its belt, below its category. We're underperforming. And so much so that many louder voices than mine have opined that Nigeria, if not actually a failed state, is at least a failing state because of what we have noticed within the political landscape. The problems of Nigeria are well known. People have said that it is no longer a time for melancholy or for lamentations. But the fact of the situation is that at 1960, when we became independent, the countries that we were roughly at par with are countries like Singapore, like Malaysia, to some extent, South Korea, have moved on much further beyond Nigeria. In fact, you remember in 1960, the University College Hospital in Ibadan was number 3 in the Commonwealth. I don't know where you want to classify UCH today. The emigration of our doctors from this country to the West and to the Middle East has ensured that we're not in the upper leagues of Medicare. We've not had any success story in terms of a vaccine for the virus that is ravaging the world. We still have malaria as a serious problem for Nigerians, despite the good work that the Institute of Medical Research has been doing. In education, well, maybe we have almost 180 universities. In numbers, as they come, will give the impression that we've gone far, unlike the 2 universities that we had in 1960. But in terms of the quality of pedagogy, as well as the quality of our graduates, there are large question marks on whether we have actually progressed or we've regressed. The ASU has been on strike for more than 6 months now, and they have informed us that they are not ready to go back immediately, except what they consider as right measures are taken by government to salvage the situation. Many of the children of the ruling class no longer pursue higher education in Nigeria. They go abroad and study in the famous universities that we all know of and come back, as it were, to lord it over their less fortunate compatriots. So that's education score. I don't want to sound like an Afro-pessimist, but I hear that we have a housing shortfall of about 18 million houses. We still have slums in our cities, even Lagos that wants to be a mega city. When you see that we have no provision for sidewalks, and you see people just drifting side by side with yellow buses and what have you, it's just like a group of termites moving. There's no order, no rhythm. And we've been making a lot of noise about the progress we've made in the railway system. But I know that as a student in Europe, 40, 50 years ago, you could take a train from Moscow to Madrid and go from what was then known as Leningrad to London, because despite the ideological divide in Europe, there was a lot of integration. The rail lines that we are putting up, I noticed there are no electricity connections. Fast trains were not contemplated by the Chinese. The Chinese have created very fast trains across China. And if you're talking of Russia, you know of the Trans-Siberian Express from Vladivostok right up to St. Petersburg. Those trains that I see running on diesel, they can't compete with the modern trains that you find in Europe. What we saw as young people studying in Europe is a far cry from what we are celebrating here. I listened to Mr. Amechi romanticize about what they've done in the rail system, but those of us who have traveled somewhat, we know that actually those trains are not 21st century compliant. When you are having electric trains, fast trains that could make Abuja from Lagos within a few hours. Because I still remember in my student days, more than 50 years ago, you could take a train from Kyiv to Moscow, the overnight express. You go board the train in Kyiv at about 8 p.m. and 6 o'clock in the morning, you land in Moscow every day. So that's the type of thing that we ought to be envisaging. In other words, I'm saying that we've not even dreamt as largely as we could have. We are celebrating little successes. I think Nigeria has not been well served, and many Nigerians are not enthused. They are not happy to celebrate 60 years. I remember when India celebrated 60 years of its independence. It advertised planes, advertised electrical things that they manufactured. I don't know what Nigeria has been able to manufacture. You remind me of what my late friend Claude Ake characterized the Nigerian political economy as a disjointed, or what he called disarticulate system. A system, an economic system that produces what it does not consume and consumes what it does not produce. When you bridge the gap between production and consumption, then Nigeria will have left the train station of underdevelopment. So what I'm saying is we need to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure, reset the template for national development in almost all facets of human endeavor. So I'm saying if you want my answer or my grading for Nigeria, as maybe 40%, not more. And 40% in the universities is a bare pass.
Let my people go, it used to be called.
You got it right.
I'm going to ask Mr. Adeshina to respond to Prof's, shall I say, grading, being that he is where he is. And Prof has said we need to reset the template. Mr. Adeshina.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Except that this time Prof will not be the teacher. He will be part of those being graded. Because we are all Nigerians, and whatever has happened to our country, we are responsible for it one way or the other. I agree with him. Nigeria has not performed up to par. Nigeria can do a lot better. There have been many misturns, false starts, wasting of resources, theft, brigandage, all sorts. And that is what led Nigeria into where it is now. But in terms of, is Nigeria finding a bearing now? I would say yes, Nigeria is finding a bearing. We have wasted time, we have wasted years, we have wasted resources. But I believe Nigeria is finding a bearing. It's not going to come by a sudden flight. It's not going to come in 5-10 years. But if we stay the course, we'll get there. Prof was talking about Europe 50 years ago. This is Nigeria, this is Africa, far from where Europe was 50 years ago. But can we get there? Yes, we can, if we stay the course. Because till now, we didn't have a direction. We will go one way, turn around, go another way. I heard Professor Patu told me what he said earlier about the economy and lacking the confidence to see things through. But if you now have a government that can see things through, it shows that we are on the road to where we should be. And it's a matter of staying the course. If we stay the course, Nigeria in 10, 20, 30 years will not be the same, and we will not have to lament at maybe every decade of our anniversary.
All right, then, Mr. Adeshina, let me, from you, go to Dr. Junaid Mohammed, who is in our Kano studios. Dr. Mohammed, like Prof, you are also an elder statesman. You've seen what some people refer to as the better years, the golden years, depending on who it is you're talking to. Today, where would you place us 60 years later? Someone I was talking to said, at 60, you should be retiring, which means you've done enough to live on for the rest of your life. Have we done that? Is that the yardstick of assessment?
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My understanding of development, economic development, social development, is that it is not by fiat, it is not a magic. If you want to invest, you have to spend time and make sure that you invest well. And your priorities in investment must be such that those investments will render dividend within a certain period of time. But if you believe because you have certain advantages somewhere, then those advantages must manifest themselves everywhere, then you are likely to be disappointed. And that's exactly where we are today. We're in a period whereby we are disappointed because quite a number of people, and I'm sure those who spoke before me, have restated that we have been punching, as everybody has said, below our weight. And I think once you are punching below your weight, it means you are not doing as well as you have the capacity or the potential to do. Mr. Oyebode had experiences which he shared with me, even though I was a younger person. And everything he said was true. I remember vividly how I used to take a train overnight, either from Kyiv or from Kharkov to Moscow, and how I used to take trains from Moscow to Leningrad, and how we used to go by ship across the the Baltic Sea into Western Europe via those countries in the Scandinavian part of the seas, and how cheap it was and how easy it was, how respected we were. Unfortunately, we are in a situation now where, in spite of the vastly different circumstances of our students and those who go and visit to those countries today, the respect we earned or we were given as students is not being earned by our students or even by our businessmen, and I think that's unfortunate. Secondly, I believe propaganda has its place in whatever we do, but frankly speaking, propaganda alone does not develop a nation. No matter what we say, the values or the advantages or the paraphernalia of governance under the present circumstances, the fact of the matter is we are not achieving what we thought we could achieve, and what has been promised to us by this and previous administrations has simply vanished. So I would like to have a situation whereby those of us who are in the competitive political and partisan game do so, and do so sincerely and honestly. I want to believe that it is possible to still have a political class in this country that believes in the country, that believes that it is possible to do certain things. I'm not particularly keen about some of the comparisons being made. For example, those who talk about Pakistan and India. Pakistan and India became independent in 1947 through a very, very bloody civil war. I don't think we can survive, or we are in the mood for another civil war simply because we want to be where India is today or where Pakistan is today, because these are nuclear powers. We don't need nuclear weapons here. Secondly, I believe also the comparison being placed between us and South Korea. Well, in 1957, at the end of the Korean War, which ended in 1953, Korea and Ghana had virtually the same GDP per capita. And it is really pathetic that the years that have gone through from 1957 to date, the populations between Korea and Ghana have remained virtually the same, 20-something million. But you go and see what is happening in Korea and compare it to what is happening in Ghana, even though we are not talking about Ghana here primarily. But the development is relative, and you can see clearly that the Koreans have really gone ahead of us. You can enter some caveat and say, look, the Koreans were beneficiaries of a mindset which came from the Cold War, because they got American money, got American technology, they got American protection, and the Americans were determined to establish something in making sure that they established South Korea, which they excise from the main Korean peninsula. We have to be very careful in making some of these comparisons. But I want to say, for the avoidance of doubt, that whatever is ascribed to Nigeria as a potential is achievable. If, however, we're not serious about it, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves. And I have no doubt in my mind that if Nigerians put themselves up to something, good or bad, because sometimes we can be very mischievous, I believe we can do anything and everything. But we can only do so if we have certain preconditions in place. One, we have to have a more united, a more patriotic country. We have to have leadership that is serious. We have to simply minimize the level of dastardly corruption, which has been one of the main banes of underdevelopment in this country. And we have to believe that if we say this is what we are doing, then all hands must be on deck to achieve what we have committed ourselves to do. I recall in the years, in the 1960s and 70s, we used to have what we call development plans. Those development plans were not always achieved, but at least they provide a guideline, a marker, through which the political class the civil services, the professional class can aim at. And at the end of the day, 3 years or 5 years, we can now stop and say, look, in what we set as a target for ourselves, we have achieved A, B, C. We did not achieve X, Y, Z, and somewhere in between, the targets which are achievable, but for some reason or another, which were not achieved. This is the kind of attitude I want us to see. But the idea that you can now come and simply shout slogans, oh, we want to have a free enterprise system. Now, the free enterprise system may work for others. Clearly, it hasn't worked for us. And if we want to follow that free enterprise system, capitalism, we call it, without any mincing words, we have to make sure that there is a broad consensus in the country that capitalism is the game and capitalism is one to do. But due to the time when we keep practicing classical capitalism, there has been nothing to show for it. This mixed economy, which we started with at independence and before independence, is what carried us through and what brought us the two universities we're very proud of, and which were almost the pride of Africa and of which were respected universities. Those universities are gone. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to establish a university, and you see the result. Secondly, every state wants to set up a university. Some of these are nothing but glorified primary school or secondary schools. The signboard, as I told a general, is bigger than the size of the class itself. And we also must be conscious of what our needs are. We cannot continue producing people when, in fact, the economy is not producing the necessary jobs. The market simply is not there for the graduates we are producing. And anybody who has read any bit of history will tell you that one of the most dangerous things you can do is to keep producing university graduates who have no job. You are stuck in the preconditions for a massive revolution. And when it comes, there's no guarantee that because you're not involved, you will not be affected. We have to be very careful about what we do. And we also have to prioritize our education as we prioritize those sectors of the economy, not just education. So that if we want to prioritize education, is it technical education? Where do we place agriculture? What do we do with industrial production? Because if we have industries, but the raw materials for industries are not available, we're wasting our time. And we have been making noise, listening to propaganda from the West about subsidies. Now, I believe in subsidy because nobody has developed agriculture in the world today, and no country today is developing agriculture without massive subsidy. If we subsidize our agriculture, we make sure that our own farmers are helped and they're assisted. They're given the necessary inputs, medium or large-scale inputs. We also encourage this idea of cooperatives. Then we can be taken to be serious. But at the rate we are going, the whole, which I grew up in the North seeing, in the last 70 years, is still the whole I see. Now, if this is what we are going to do, I want to assure you that we can never be self-sufficient. There will be nothing like food security in Nigeria. And I want to assure you that without us being self-sufficient in agriculture, that any talk about diversifying the national economy will be nothing but sheer waste of time, deceiving ourselves. And deceit don't build a nation. The task ahead of us, our generation and the generation ahead of us, is to make sure that this country at least can stand on its own. If a nation cannot feed itself, and every year we are wondering whether the rains will be okay or if they will not be okay, whether we'll have enough fertilizer on ground, the herbicides are here and they can be used, and then the price is reasonable to the farmer, then we are never going to have what I regard as a meaningful food security regime. And
Dr. Mohammed, at this point, allow me to interject. Dr. Mohammed, let me interject and ask Mr. Adeshina. Yes, Mr. Adeshina, I'm sure you've listened to Dr. Mohammed's submission here, as well as Professor Oyebode's submission and Professor Utomi. They all speak to different sides, but it's basically the same thing. What's your reaction to Dr. Mohammed's position?
Yes, I have largely agreed with Dr. Junaid Mohammed, except when he talked about agriculture. He said we were nowhere near food security. I beg to disagree with him. In terms of food security, we are nearly there. We are not fully there, but we are nearly there. Nigeria, between 2015 and now, has transmuted from a mass importer of food to a country that grows what it eats. We used to spend maybe about $3 billion a year to import rice. That does not happen again. We imported every kind of grains. There was a time we were importing beans from Burkina Faso. All that does not happen again. So, how can Dr. Mohammed now say we are not near food security? We are not there, but we are far, far, far from where we were in 2015. Nigeria has stopped importing rice, importing beans, importing all kinds of grains, and yet you say it is still the whole famine you saw 70 years ago. It cannot be correct. It cannot be correct. And he spoke about subsidy for agriculture. That is what Central Bank is doing through the Anchor Borrowers Program. A lot of farmers have been assisted to plant on a wide scale, and they repay that money. Central Bank came out last week with a percentage of money that has been repaid in the Anchor Borrowers Program. So I don't believe we still do subsistence farming of cutlass and hoe largely. And the food security situation in Nigeria has changed completely from what it was in 2015. Look at a practical example. The world was locked down between maybe March and June. That time, oil prices fell drastically as low as $20 per barrel. Nigeria did not have money to import anything. All international borders were closed. If we wanted to import, the money was not available. If we wanted to import, the borders were closed. What were we eating? Locally grown food. You saw all those palliative things. You saw heaps and heaps of rice, locally produced. So I don't think the picture that Dr. Junaid painted of agriculture is quite correct. Other areas, yes, I believe Nigeria may have fallen short of its potentials in the past 60 years. But like I said earlier, we have turned and we are heading in a right direction, which if we maintain, not one government will do it. It will be government after government. As they say, government is a continuum. If that continuum is in the proper direction, then Nigeria will get to where it should be.
Oh, all right, Mr. Adeshina. Prof, I saw you gesticulating when that was going on. How do you react, Prof?
Well, Dr. Junaid is a well-known figure to me. We were both at the National Confab 6 years ago, and we both studied in the old Soviet Union. And that's why there was not much difference in terms of what we saw as students in the old Soviet Union and what we're trying to achieve. Electricity is basic. Like Lenin himself said, if you don't have electricity, you can't have industrialization. We have a Jakarta steel complex. We hope it will jerk back into life, but we need to increase the level of electricity that is available to the economy. That is yet to be achieved. Even if that is all that can be achieved in the immediate future, it will be a giant step forward. We are just hearing of promises, metering before billing. Those are semantics. You produce enough electricity, and then you have the capability for transmission as well as distribution. Then Nigeria will no longer be what you and I know. Without electricity, we're just kidding. And so quite sincerely, I have not much to say, except to emphasize the necessity for increase in generation of electric power.
let me go to Professor Pat Utomi. Professor Utomi, you had the first word on this. Now you've had the opportunity to listen to both Professor Oyebode, Dr. Mohammed, and of course Mr. Adeshina. What are your concluding thoughts on this segment on this day going forward?
Well, going forward, we need to have an honest desire to build a future. And that desire to build a future should be fueled by an understanding that democracy is about rational public conversation. We've not been having honest, rational public conversation. We've been having fake news hauled from this side to that side. We sometimes forget the real issue. It's not about Nigeria anymore. It's about these persons. The obsession with power, to hold on to power for whatever it is, I think is the biggest challenge that we have. If we really think Nigeria, 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 I think we will find that we will put all these things aside and ask ourselves honestly, why are we crawling instead of running? And we will find when we examine closely and speak honestly, candidly to one another, that what has happened to us is that there is, I'd like to turn to, in fact, the words of Professor Tahiru Jega in trying to look at the puzzle, not understanding what's going on in Nigeria. He says it's got to be that either the people who are running things are overwhelmed, or that they are incompetent, or that they are indifferent. I don't know if it's any of those three or something more. All I know is that the Nigerian people feel that the people who run Nigeria are distant from the Nigerian people. That the running of Nigeria is not reflecting the pain of the average Nigerian down there on the street. There's too much obsession with power and holding on to it and having your way, rather than having this rational public conversation that can determine what path we can travel, more patriotism, more commitment to tomorrow, rather than right now and the short-term gain of individuals who are seeking to corner power. That's really what the problem is, in my opinion, because if we are really committed, passionately committed to Nigeria, we'll be going around in circles, because we are going around in circles on many issues. Professor Oyebode talked about power. Everybody knows that you don't even begin to go anywhere. I tell you the story of a friend of mine who was a minister in Nigeria. I mean, when this thing happened, he was on a flight, on a West African flight. And he was sitting next to somebody, a West African, who didn't realize he was a minister in Nigeria. And he said to him, "You Nigerians, I want to ask you a very simple question. This light, no light, no light in Nigeria. Is it that you people don't know that if you don't know, I can help you go and buy the power plant from GE or somewhere? Because people have been talking no light, no light, no light. Don't you know where they sell these power plants?" When the minister landed, he called me, said he wanted me to be the first person he would speak to, because he knew I would find that statement a nice little fun. Look, the Nigerian elite, in this obsession with what will my friends get, who will, look at what they do in Dubai. Who produces this power? Who can better manage it? Come in, set up. This is your target. Produce it. Then let our people begin to take over from you systematically. No. But Nigerian politicians will want their friends to corner it because they think they make money. Money, 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 money. What are they doing with this money? And they make a mess of the country. We cannot continue like this. Power is not it's not a discovery. 100 years ago, power was solved as a problem. But instead of inviting those who know what they're doing to take over and giving them targets, we'll keep fiddling around with something that will make our friends make more money. And we're putting the lives of 200 million people in slow motion. That's what we're doing. No society should function like that.
Professor Utomi, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm told we've completely run out of time. I think we'll probably have just enough time to say thank you to all our guests today. We wish we had more time to examine these issues in depth. We always wish we did. Professor Oyebode, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you, as always, for your time. Dr. Junaid Mohammed from our Kano studios. Doc, thank you so much for coming in. Happy Independence Anniversary to you, as well as for Professor Pat Utomi, who joined us from Lagos. Thank you so much for your time. Please continue to speak out as you always have, as well as Mr. Femi Adeshina. You receive the battering, but that's because at the beginning of the program we did say that's where you are at the moment. Thank you for making out the time to join us, and happy Independence Anniversary. Thank you so much for coming in. So, Ijama, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, and we'll be talking about something equally important, the economy. Please stay on with us.
I will also look at some of your comments.